Good evening, students. Welcome to Dr. Kalam IAS Academy. Today, we'll continue, we'll elaborate some of the things which we have already considered with respect to ethics, values, morals, attitude. Dear students, this is a very important session. For the past 2 days, we have dealt some things with respect to values, ethics, morals, including today's class. At least minimum 4 to 5 questions have come from these things, what I have taught in your UPSC examination. So please give due attention. These are very subjective. These are the things for which you have to put a lot of effort. And also, even after reading many things, you won't be having clarity. I have made the things very simple, very clear, yet authenticate. Having said that, let me just flash the things for your recap. Very important. This will be the last time I will be telling you the secret of cracking prelims. Ask those students who have failed. They will tell you this is the truth, this is the secret. To clear prelims, you should have mastery over GS 1, 2, 3, all topics. If you think that some topics are mains related or something which traditionally are not present, at least you have some glance. At least you once go through all the topics here. That is one important thing, which is in fact the secret. I have given you how all these things. Then most important, carrying in the total marks, nearly 800 marks it touches. If there is one subject in GS, that is ethics, integrity, and aptitude. That we have discussed. So internalize these concepts. So you have to take a ethics paper in relation to interview and essay. After like another 1 or 2 sessions, I'll be explaining as to how to relate ethics paper. What is that they are asking in interview? How you have to start your interview preparation. By now, there is no special preparation for those things. How you have to integrate those things. We are clear with the concept of ethics, which is a set of standards which society places on itself, which guide behavior, choice, and action. This definition you shouldn't forget. Integrity is practicing ethics on a consistent basis. Aptitude, on the other hand, is inborn. Skill is gained. It is aptitude is related to work. It is future potential. It's specific. It may be physical, mental, or both. Very important thing is we all have aptitude. We all have aptitude. Some have low, some have high. But until and unless there is something what is known as training or practice, it cannot be realized into ability. Dear students, so you have to choose a career, job, where you have got aptitude, because you'll be having advantage over others. In this regard, very important, please concentrate this one. First, you know what is your civil service aptitude with respect to your CSAT paper. How to go about this? Just take previous year question and solve without keeping time. If you can solve them, then you already have that aptitude. Then it's a matter of some fine tuning. In that you will come to know where I lack aptitude. Even after, there are some cases, even after 1 hour, you cannot solve one problem. In comprehension, even if your time is more, you may be going wrong. After you come to know this, you have to go for training. Because the ability to solve CSAT paper depends upon your aptitude and training. If you have got high aptitude, this training is required. For that, you should know exactly what is that. But there has to be practice, there has to be training, otherwise it cannot be. Right? Next, most important thing in CSAT is, if something is very difficult, You come to know like after practicing. Then my suggestion is please don't touch for many, many reasons. At least you after till you finish all the questions, don't touch, don't look into those kind of questions. Just by glance you leave them because you already know. I give you the example. Say for me, previously when I wrote, seating arrangement was one. Seating arrangement was one of the things where I was having a lot of difficulty. So even after practicing, somehow I couldn't master. If you are trying those kind of things in the beginning or somewhere in the examination, you will be struck. Your confidence will decrease. You can come if you have time afterwards. That is the secret of this CSAT tip. And another important thing is with respect to answer writing. Dear students, one of the most important thing, but neglected by all in civil service preparation is answer writing. In this regard, there is another important thing where you have to be good in English. You have to be little good in English. We can say you should have a better comprehension. If you don't have better comprehension, see, if you have better comprehension, 50% of the things already you are done with. Not only that, if you don't have better comprehension, reading things, all these things, you cannot complete the paper. Not only CSAT, even GS1, if your reading speed is high, if your comprehension is good, then paper 2, that is your CSAT, is a cake for you. Not only that, GS1, for that also, you need to have speed. So for that, best method is editorial. Dear students, so what you have to do? In every day, please take one editorial from Hindu newspaper. Please listen to me carefully. This will be a game changer. This is one of the technique which I only tell those students whom I advise in my personal sittings, in personal mentorship. Very, very important. Take a Hindu editorial. If you take the newspaper at the center, you will be having 2 editorials. In that, you take one editorial. If you are a beginner, read it once, read it twice, till you understand. I am repeating, read it once, twice, thrice, till you understand, till you get the comprehension of the thing. After that, you try to put all these things in your own words. It doesn't matter whether you are having all these words, everything or not. It will come over a period of time. This is the beginning. This is the basis of answer writing. What you are doing here, you are taking a thing, you are connecting the dots here. You are connecting the points. You are assimilating the point. You are expressing your ideas. That is what happening in mains. Say, for example, Tina Dabia, she got, like they say, she got some 96 out of 200 in prelims. So though she cleared prelims, but she got first rank because she was able to express the things what she knows. This can happen only when you do this exercise. And also, this can also be equated to another thing, what is known as notes making. What do you do in notes making? If there is, say, for example, a large page, 1,000 words, you concentrate that into 10 words, 20 words, 30 words, depending upon the importance, depending upon the things. Here, your mind will be trained as to how to put the sentences, how to connect the dots, how to answer. If you are not doing these things, answer writing, this is the only mode of communication between you and the examiner. Through only writing, you are communicating the things. Dear students, you will be given just like 7 to 8 minutes per question, which carry 12.5 marks. In that, if you don't have this ability, you cannot write anything. There is very, very little time. In this, you have to read the question, you have to analyze, writing, all these things. Your mind should be trained on a day-to-day basis. Not only that, if you do this, your comprehension, this your CSAT will be a cakewalk for you. You can read good. You can write fast. You can read fast. So, my dear students, I request you all to daily take one editorial of any newspaper, preferably since all of you are reading Hindu newspaper, Hindu editorial. Read it once, twice, thrice. Afterwards, try to put in your words. Here by this, your comprehension will be increased. So if your comprehension will be increased, your CSAT is a cakewalk. See here, 50%. Not only that, this also requires a lot of comprehensions. The questions are very, very lengthy. If you don't have better comprehension, you may have to read 2 or 3 times again and again. Even after reading them, you may not get the whole picture. That is one thing. The second thing is, after reading those things, you have to write those things in 3 to 4 lines, or the maximum 1/4 of the total. So I request you all, without exception, to do this one. This will be a game changer for prelims and also mains. This is the answer writing, real answer writing technique, where you are connecting the things, where you are putting yourself, you are putting in your own words. See, I'll give you one more example. Notes. Many of you will be having problem in making notes. Why? Notes making is an art. It comes by practice. Often people who ask about, sir, how to make notes, whether to make notes or not, when to make notes, are the people who have not made the notes completely in their previous learning, in their graduation or their 10th PUC, 10 plus 2. So they don't know like when to make notes, what to make notes. On the other hand, some people already have the habit of note making. So their way of reading is by making notes. Until and unless you start making the notes, your writing practices will be like almost you have not started. When you start making notes, you will condense the things. You'll put in your own words. By making that, you will retaining capacity will be high. That's an immense thing. So I request you all to read one to begin with. And you have to write and you have to take a screenshot and you have to send that to the number which was there in the first slide ending with 27. Let's take hardly 10 to 15. Right? This is one. So this is one of the key things. So I took a lot of time. This you have to do. Then moving forward, this is the answer writing. Afterwards, we'll take up question and answer, all these things. So then we discussed and our thing was clear that through attitude, this paper is testing candidates' attitude. Attitude is the specific determinant, or it is, if you know the attitude, you can predict the behavior to a greater extent. General determinants, your ethics, values are general determinants of behavior. On the other hand, your attitude is specific determinants of the behavior. Your attitude reflects your ethics and values. So that is the reason UPSC is testing attitude, and problem solving approach is the one which is testing your aptitude. So the heading, till this thing, we are clear with the things. So this is the one we have to internalize. I think by now this is internalized. The whole syllabus is internalized for you. There are some concepts with respect to society and governance, which will be applied to case study. Here the concepts are from psychology, philosophy, sociology, and here in society, private, public, profession, in governance, civil service, public service, administration, public administration, governance, good governance. So these are the things which we have already looked into. So the syllabus concepts, things from philosophy, things from psychology, things from sociology, governance in this regard. These are the things which are there in governance things, which we have already discussed. So ethics, morals, values, attitude, they have got many things in common. We have seen that. After that, integrity and aptitude is related to the above four concepts. That is their application, that is their following. Probity is more objective. Very important. Probity is objective. Is more objective compared to integrity, because in probity we have got processes, procedures. If you follow them, it's probity. Then we discussed about aptitude, emotional intelligence. We'll look into that. In governance thing, we have got civil service, public service, administration, public administration, bureaucracy, government, good governance, ethical governance. If you know these topics, if you know the meaning, real understanding of the thing, almost you can answer most of the questions in ethics. You can answer most of the questions in ethics. There'll be few things like citizen charter, accountability, right to information. Then other than that, almost everything will be covered for you. So you have to be clear. Directly they're asking questions with respect to these concepts. Until and unless you have got clarity about this, ethics paper won't be that easy. If the things are clear to you, ethics paper is a cakewalk for you, my dear students. We have come up with a concept or the acronym VEMA, where we consider values, ethics, morals, and attitude as same. All these things are moral construct, mental constructs. These are the things which cannot be directly observed or seen. These are present in your brain. They are constructs, but they give rise to measurable phenomena. These guide our choice, action, behavior, simplify our interaction with the environment, bring individual social harmony and well-being. How? By giving relative preference. Because of that, you are arranging the things in hierarchy and you will be getting a priority list. They are the things which provide standards, principles. They help us to know what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is just, what is unjust, socially approved, socially disapproved. We took up the examples also. Next was a question is VEMA static or dynamic? A very important question. Your answer should be relatively permanent. So Dell, person with Dell, please mute your phone. They are relatively permanent. Why they are relatively permanent? Because they are the source of identity, our identity. We want to have a specific identity. We want to have a concrete identity. That is the framework through which we interact with the society and society interact with the things. These values have developed through a lot of investment of time, energy, gallons of blood, time has been spent. Sudden change in them brings imbalance and also resistance to change. This is the reason why second IRC gave one example, beautiful example, which says that if the father is corrupt, values are relatively permanent. Son also may be having, grandson also may be having. So both son and grandson are not allowed if the father is corrupt in Korea. How are they related? In this regard, values are those which are important. They are abstract, global. They are not type to object, they are relatively permanent. My dear students, there are many things which are common with respect to values. When you take up preference, values, ethics, morals, and attitude, this can be to a greater extent used interchangeably. When you get confused, don't get confused. At the same time, they are different. So civil service values, civil service values are those values which people consider that a civil servant should have. They are called civil service values. Civil service values are those values which are important for civil service. Then what are these values? These are the values which people think that they have to be present in these people, in civil servants. That is foundational value. This is the way second IRC has defined these things. Then how they are related? This diagram is very, very important. Just make very simple. Values, Some values which are in the form of standards are called as your morals and ethics. When they are at the individual level, it is moral, at the societal level, it is ethics. When your values are tied to an object, it becomes your attitude. By tying your values, in values means in that you have got ethics also. When it is tied to an object, you are evaluating. Attitude is making an evaluative judgment. The other important diagram was this one. Preferences which are in the form of importance are your values. Preferences which have a basis. Preferences which have a basis in liking. I like A over B. I like A over B. Then it will be interest. If it is based on importance, it will be value. Values can become interest and interest can become values. When interest becomes dominant, broad-based, general, then it becomes values. On the other hand, when values become transient, specific, then they will become interest. Interest will be in the form of your instincts, maybe like sexual drive, sexual instinct, urges. These are the things. So here one more important, when values are practiced or ethics is a part of value, their practice, then it leads to integrity. In a formal professional sense, it is probity. And when these values are tied to an object, it becomes attitude. Here you are evaluating. By tying your values, attitude, you are evaluating the things. Evaluative judgment is your attitude. Probity is complete and confirmed integrity. It is evidence of ethical behavior. Why? How can we say that? This we can say because there are processes and procedures. If you follow them, then we can say that there is integrity. Then next is whether values absolute or relative. What do you understand by that? Before that, let me give one more important thing connected to this. You are living in a society, means you are interacting with the environment. Environment is not static, it is dynamic. Environment is dynamic. Then when you are interacting with the things, how can you maintain and how can you say that values are relatively permanent? So I make the point once again clear. How can you say, like what makes values, ethics, morals and attitude relatively permanent, even though the environment is dynamic? The answer is, the environment is dynamic. To accommodate that, your values will be manifested in different form. The value will be same, the ethical standard will be same, but it will be manifested in different form. Let me give you an example. Say for example, patriotism. Patriotism is a value. For one, dying for the nation, going and dying for the nation in the border, fighting against the enemies is patriotism. Dying. For another, writing patriotic songs and raising awareness among the people is patriotism for them. For another, just simply following the constitution, fundamental rights, duties is patriotism for them. So here the value is same, but it is manifesting in different form. By doing that, even when the environment is dynamic, it is trying to be relatively permanent. Otherwise, it would have not been there, not possible. By this, by manifesting your values in different behaviors, different ways, here, the dynamism in the environment and also the uniqueness of the individual are taken care of. Individuals are unique. Not even atom The electrons which are inside the atom, they are not identical. They have got different spinning, different orbits. Nothing in this world is 100% identical. Everything is unique, in fact. So, by giving some permissible behaviors, we are accommodating the uniqueness of the individual and also dynamism. Right? Connected to this thing, and this has been asked in the UPSC also. Are your values, ethics, morals, and attitude absolute or relative? Absolute means context and situation independent. They don't depend on the context. They don't depend on the situation. Absolute, the same colors you can correlate. Relative, on the other hand, context and situation dependent. Very, very important. Please internalize this. So what do you understand by relative? Values are relative means values are dependent on the context and situation. Then we say that values are relative. On the other hand, when we say values, when I say values, it is for Vema. When I say Vema is absolute, it means that they are independent of context and situation. Whatever may be. Then what does this exactly means? Means truth is truth always. Whatever may be the reason. Whatever may be the reason. Honesty is honesty. It is independent of context and situation. That is absolute. On the other hand, for relativists, honesty depends upon the context. It depends upon the situation present. Right? So one is context and situation independent, and another is dependent. Let me elaborate these things for you. The students, absolute. When we say that values are absolute, it means that when you say Vema is absolute, this is with respect to all the four. All the four, this and all the things which we'll be discussing today will be related to all the four Vema. When we say that Vema is absolute, when we say that Vema is absolute, we say that their context and situation independent. They doesn't depend on them. And also, the best example, how you can remember is, truth is truth, honesty is honesty. They neither exist or they don't. There is no midway between that. There is no midway between that. Means sometimes it is okay to tell lie. Sometimes you can be honest, sometimes you cannot, you can be dishonest. No, nothing like that. Is this clear to you? Let me once again tell with respect to relative. What does this? Then the things will be clear to you here. When we say that Vema is relative, it means that there is nothing like truth, or there is nothing like not truth. There is nothing like good or bad. There is nothing like right or wrong. They're all context and situation dependent. Please connect the dots here. Here we are talking whether they are absolute, means honesty means there is some absolute thing for that. According to absolutes. When it comes to relativists, there is nothing like honesty. We can't say this is honesty. It depends upon the situation and the context. Say for example, here, the classical example which has been quoted everywhere, Yudhishthira and Ashwatthama. You know, all of you know this story. Yudhishthira, like they wanted to deceive Dronacharya. Ashwatthama was a son of Dronacharya. Yudhishthira said, Ashwatthama, in a loud voice. And afterwards he decreased the pitch or some disturbance or something like that. The elephant, the horse has died. According to relativists, this is correct. According to absolutes, this is wrong. The relatives may argue in the larger interest, in the world, in the interest of the world, in the interest of world peace. What Yudhishthira did is right. Otherwise, they would have not conquered Dronacharya. He was a great warrior. For relativists, say for example, killing. See, you are killing someone to protect your life. If someone has tried to do something harm to you, someone has tried to kill you, to protect yourself, if you kill someone, then it's okay, it's right, it's good. Because what is right, what is wrong, what is truth, what is honesty, depend upon the circumstance. They are relative. The relativists, they say that there is nothing like honesty, 100%. There is nothing like concrete honesty. They are all dependent on the circumstance and situation. Then what made these people to say like this? Then what is the correct thing? I told both absolute and also relative. Then what is the correct? Why are they saying like that? Dear students, according to relativists, humans are at the center of creation of values. Humans are, why relativists say that they all depend on the circumstance, depend on situation, is that according to them, humans are at the center of creation of values. Humans are the people who are creating values. Thus, with a change in person, time, circumstance, there will be changes in values. Are you getting me? So, according to relativists, humans are at the center of creation of values. If humans would have been there, they would have not created values. Since they are the center, they are the important thing. And this is the one which is most important at the center. The most important thing is human thing. So your values are created by humans. Humans are the center. The change in person, time, circumstances would be change in the values also, according to them. Then they say that the outcomes in a particular situation will decide as to what extent a value held by a person is absolute or relative. If the outcome is beneficial, say for example, Yudhishthira, it is said that Yudhishthira, Dharmaraja, said Ashwatthama in a big voice. Afterwards, in a low voice, the elephant has died. That is a pure deceiving thing. But the outcome was good. He has done that with the aim of protecting truth for world peace. There was a war against the unjust things. If the outcomes are better, then they qualify as right. Then they are good. Means here there is a teleological reasoning. There is a consequential reasoning. What is this teleological reasoning? Teleo means end. Teleo means end. End means outcome. End means outcome, result, consequence. So relativists are basing their things on the teleological reasoning, on the consequential reasoning. And also they say that if values were completely stable, individual and social change will be impossible. We humans are evolving. The society is dynamic. If there is something which is permanent, then it is only the change. If values are completely stable, you carefully use the word, they're saying not only stable, if they're completely stable, individual and social change will be impossible. Right? If the values are completely stable, individual and social change will be impossible. Status quo always. So this is not good for the society, for the evolution of the human beings. For relativists, end justifies the means. Here, the same thing. The outcome. What is the outcome? It justifies. The end justifies the means. Say, for example, you are an individual. You are helping 100 poor people. You are helping 100 poor people. Outcome is very, very good. But what you are doing, same as you have seen in movies like Robin Hood or some other people. What you are doing? You are looting the rich. Looting, you are stealing the rich. And you are distributing this money among the poor. Here, the outcome is good. You are helping 100 people, 1,000 people, poor people. So this will justify your means according to relativists. Say, for example, one more thing. Doctor telling the truth on the face of a patient. Is it right or wrong? Doctor will say you, hello, my dear patient, you have got a cancer. You just have another 1 or 2 months, like directly on his face. If you have got any work, so complete all those things. Or something on the face of the patient. According to relativists, this may not be the correct thing. Doctor might have said, my dear patient, you have got cancer. We'll try our best. We'll try to cure that. It is possible to cure. We have cured many individuals. If you cooperate, if you have the will, if you support us. So for them, the relativists, there is nothing like truth. There is nothing like absolutely honest thing. They are all dependent on the outcomes. They are all dependent on the time, person, situation. Here they are applying teleological. Teleo means end. Teleological end, result, consequences. So according to them, outcomes, circumstances, all will decide whether the value, the Vemma, is absolute or relative. Why? Because humans are at the center of creation of the values. Right? On the other hand, absolute says that they are absolutely present. Means they say that they exist or they don't. They exist or they don't. There is nothing like midway. For example, regarding truth has a value means that either person is truthful or non-truthful. Either a person is truthful or non-truthful. There is nothing like sometimes if the situation demands, you tell lie. What Yudhishthira did. Think it over. Think it for a while. Excuse me. Why? What made them to say like that? One of the best example given by the leading person with respect to values, the most, you can say, authority on values is Rockage, one of the person, like very, very prominent person. According to him, why values are absolute means, why values are absolute means, why Vemmas are absolute means, we are not taught that it is desirable to be little bit honest and little bit logical. Have you been taught like that? Think it over. Have you been ever told like you can be honest sometimes and you can be dishonest sometimes? We are not taught that it is all right to be sometimes honest. Is there anything like that taught to you? No, there's nothing like middle way. So we are taught all these things in isolation. Values are enduring. They're taught and learned in isolation. They're not taught and learned in relation with other things. They're not taught and learned in relation to circumstance, persons, individuals, outcomes. They're taught to us. And we have also learned in isolation. They are very long-lasting things. They are durable things. The enduring quality, the long-lasting, durable quality of values arises only from the fact that they are initially taught and learned in isolation from our values as absolute. So this is one more important thing which you can add upon why values, ethics, morals, and attitudes are relatively permanent. Because they're enduring. They last long time because we have learned them like that. We have not learned them in relation to other things. Have we learned honesty? Have we learned courage? All these things in relation to an individual person, circumstance? No. We are taught and also we have learned the things in isolation. The enduring quality of values arises mainly from the fact that they are initially taught and learned in isolation from other values as absolute. That is the reason. And very important, dear students, one more, the most important thing, an important secret, in fact, Mahatma Gandhi. If there is any individual who can get more than sometimes more than 50 marks also, is Mahatma Gandhi. He is the only person who has been asked many times in ethics paper. Not only that, for many reasons. One person about whom you should know everything is Mahatma Gandhi. One person about whom you should know everything is Mahatma Gandhi. His works, his thoughts, maybe in polity, maybe in history, maybe with respect to essay, ethics, in interview, everywhere, some or the other way, you will get in the concept with respect to Gandhi. Dear students, if you want to see, I'm telling almost equal to 50 marks you can achieve from Mahatma Gandhi. What was the topmost marks in GS1? It was 108. In GS3, it was 101, in fact, I suppose around. So, in fact, the value, the weightage of history in that modern age, all these things will be, in fact, less than what is the value of Mahatma Gandhi Ji in your answers. So, please internalize everything about Gandhi. Correlate the things. Correlate all the thoughts of Gandhi Ji to the syllabus. His concept of equality. His concepts with respect to democracy, village, everything. Please concentrate. This is very, very important, my dear students, Mahatma Gandhi Ji. Anywhere you find anything, you should have a fair understanding. And one more important thing. If you get clarity over the thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi, somehow you can answer any question, even if you don't know those things. What does Gandhi say about Satyagraha? What does Gandhi mean about truth? What does Gandhi mean about caste system? All these things are very, very important. Please internalize. This is the one person whom you have to concentrate at any cost. Right? So here there is one important thing. Believing in and following values is a matter of conviction. When a person says that values are absolute, he is believing and following this Vema as a matter of conviction because he strongly believes. And in his opinion, it is the thing, it is the principle. That is the reason we say he is a man of principles. Because according to him, some beliefs and opinions are correct. So he has a strong conviction. So for absolutes, values are a matter of conviction, not the convenience. For relatives, values are a matter of convenience. Means they want to change according to circumstance, according to situation, according to the person. Gandhiji was a man of conviction. He followed values, he practiced values in his life such as non-violence, self-restraint, truthfulness, etc. with utmost conviction. Means with firm belief, with firm opinion. This is a very, very important thing about Gandhiji. Not only Gandhiji, for any true leader, to follow, if you want to follow any true leader, you always find and you always want to see them to stand for some values. An absolute thing. You don't want to have relativist orientation from that person's point of view. So most of the leaders, they have got absolute point of view. For Gandhiji, non-violence, many never thought that non-violence also can be a mode of fighting. So he practiced almost things with utmost conviction, and he did not deviate from this value even in the most difficult circumstances. Thus, for him, the values he believed in were absolute, not relative. The values he believed in were absolute, not relative. Here, we are going for deontological reasoning. Dear students, we will be having an elaborate session on deontology, on consequentialism, all these things. So for deontologists, end doesn't justify the means. If the ends are good, it doesn't mean that the means are good. For relativists, if the ends are good, then they justify the means. For absolutes, no, ends never justify the means. If they are unstable, if the values are unstable, continuation of the human personality and society will be impossible. So absolutes, they argue that if your values are unstable, continuity as a human personality and the society will be impossible. Because you cannot have a concrete thing as to what is a value. There will be a lot of misunderstanding in the society. People will be in dilemma. People will be confusion. In one situation, something is honest. In another situation, something is honest. And you say that honesty can be relative. There is nothing like honesty or truth. Then, if your values are unstable, continuity of human personality and even the society will be impossible. This is according to absolutes. So this is the argument with respect to absolute and relative. Then how to conclude? Say for example, when we took the concept like are the Vemma static or dynamic, our conclusion was they are relatively permanent. So you have to conclude. Very important, my dear students. You have to tell to and fro in the question, but you have to take a stand. Maybe with some conditions. You have to take a stand. That is one of the quality of decision making. Any conception of human values, if it is to be fruitful, must be able to account for both lasting as well as varying character of values. So I can say that your Vemma are both absolute and relative to conclude. You have to put both arguments and you have to conclude by saying that Vemma are absolute and also relative. any conception of human values, Vemma, if it is to be fruitful, they have to account for both lasting, absolute, and also varying characters, relative. Right? So, if the question is asked, if whether the values are absolute or relative, I have to say all these things. So, I have given complete thing with respect to both arguments, and I have concluded this. So, you have to conclude in the same way in your examination. Right? Next important thing will be with respect to, are Vemma culture specific or universal? Are Vemma culture specific or universal? The answer for this is they are both. Let me explain these things. Before that, you should have a fair understanding of what is culture. Very, very important. I'll tell these things in a very simple way, but most authenticated, the gist way. You won't get complete comprehensive definition or the meaning of culture anyway. What is culture? Culture is that which is satisfying all these three things. I repeat, culture is one which is satisfying all these three things simultaneously. Culture is that which is passed on from one generation to another generation. Culture is that which is passed on from one generation to another generation. Number one. Then you may say, sir, I have got, like, I'm a Negro or a black African. I have got a woolly hair. This I got from my father. Is this cultural? Is this cultural? Or, say for example, ants. Ants, they carried the dead ones. They do many of the things, social things. Is this cultural? The answer lies in the first one. Not only that, they have to satisfy the second also. Culture must be learned. Means your woolly hair definitely is passed on from one generation to another. But is it learned? No, it is only genetical. So it is not cultural. On the other hand, the same hair, say for example, there is a tribe. So this tribe has a way of painting his hairs in a pattern. They have this one. This is learned from and also passed on from one generation to another. Say for example, some tribes may be having some like painting on their face. It is passed on from one generation to another. Hair is not cultural, but combing the hair in a different way. Say for example, in some parts of southern India, we have got women having two jadas, means they crop the hairs in two ways. That is cultural. Just because hairs are passed on from one generation to another, they're not cultural. And at the same time, they should be commonly shared. They should be commonly shared, or most people should agree to that. Most people should agree to that. Say, for example, president. The office of president is not shared by all, but most people agree that there should be some office like president. So it is cultural, right? Is this clear to you? So what is culture? Culture is anything. Culture is anything you take for that matter. Culture is anything which is passed on from one generation to another, which is learned and which is commonly shared or agreed by most people. Commonly shared or agreed by most members of the society. That is called culture. You can put anything for this one. It can be belief. behaviors, objects, any characteristics, the way you have your house, your behavior, the objects, everything, beliefs. If anything is satisfying all these things, then we can say that that is culture. Right? Moving forward, there are two important concepts which you have to understand, and it is often asked throughout your general studies. They are, with respect to culture, they are cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. What are these? Say, for example, I am from India. I am from South India. When I see a northeast citizen, or when I see a Chinese, or when I see some individual who is eating dog, I consider this person as inferior. I consider this person as unethical. I, from a Brahmin family or farming society, I consider one individual who is eating beef as less civilized. Say, for example, on the other case, next case, think that I am from America or from any Western country. When I see this individual, the South Indian or the Brahmin people, these people, what they are doing? They are worshipping snake. They think that snake are God. And some are worshipping ants. Can ants be God? Can snakes be God? Some are even drinking like the urine of cow, saying that Gomutra, the very, especially in North India, it's revered a lot. I feel that these people are savage. In America, in Western countries, the temperature is very, very cool. And I'm from America. I never saw anyone sleeping on ground. When I come to India, these people are sleeping on ground. So if I think like that, this is known as ethnocentrism. This is known as ethnocentrism. What is ethnocentrism? You see your own culture as a center and evaluate other culture based on that. Is it clear? What is ethnocentrism? Evaluating other cultures based on the cultural things present in your thing. I went to a tribal village. There, an individual was having fever. He believed that he got this fever because there is some black magic done on him. This is because of some ghosts. This is because of evil eye. So he goes to a magic man, a medicine man. He does something and he comes. If you think that he is inferior, then it is ethnocentric. See, I just gave you the example. A Westerner may think you as a person who is illogical. On the other hand, you also think someone as unethical, illogical, not doing right. If you are thinking like that, if you are evaluating anything based on your culture, in your culture, if they say that, okay, in your culture, there is something like that, okay, he is the only person, he is the only God. All others are demons. If you think that other peoples are worshipping demons, then all tribes will be worshipping demons. That is ethnocentric. On the other hand, culture relativism refers to not judging a culture to your own standards of what is right and wrong. Instead, we should try to understand the cultural practices of other groups in its own cultural context. Is it clear? So there are many things like that. See here, a tribal person may say that, I have got fear because of some magician did something, or because of ghosts. We feel that this is illogical. But even in the most sophisticated and Western countries, more scientific, more liberal, so-called people, they also have many things like a hat, a lucky hat, a lucky shirt. Whenever I wear this shirt, somehow everything like good will happen. So I always go to interview with this shirt. So they are dependent. So when you are not judging any culture, based on what is right or what is wrong in your culture, that is cultural relativism. When you are judging this culture based on what is right and what is wrong in your culture, then it's the other way around, right? So cultural relativism refers to not judging a culture to our own standards of what is right and wrong. Instead, in cultural relativism, we should try to understand, we will understand cultural practices of other groups in their own cultural context. What is right and what is wrong in their culture. Ethnocentrism, ethno-individual centrism around you. You use your own culture as a center and evaluate other cultures based on that. Right? These are the three important things: the concept of culture, cultural relativism, ethnocentrism. Don't try to mug up the things, but you should be able to reproduce the things. Right? Next, universal. Are BEMA culture specific or universal? Means are BEMA specific to a culture, or are there anything which are universal? I'll give you an example. So marriage. Is marriage universal? Yes, marriage is universal. Marriage is universal. You go to any culture, all cultures have the concept of marriage. But what is marriage differs from culture to culture. Differ from culture to culture. In one culture, marriage, one like can have many wives. In another culture, one wife can have many husbands. In another culture, some even marry trees. And in some culture, boys marry, girls marry. What is cultural? This is the things which are different. The concept of marriage is universal, but it varies. This was one example, just for curiosity. So, some say that, those who argue that your VEMA are universal. According to them, there are some things which are common to all cultures. Think about some things which are common to all cultures. Whether you are in America, whether you are in England, whether you are in Africa. And these are basic to humanity. There are some values which are common to all culture. Number one, these are the things which are basic to humanity. So there are some which are universal. They are there irrespective of race, religion, culture, time. Example is truth, love, compassion, and moral integrity. Don't you agree? Is there any society which is not giving importance to truth, love, compassion, irrespective of the race, religion, culture, and time? This is clear? So dear students, there are some things, there are some values which are common to all culture. Why? They are basic to humanity. We are all humans. Whether you are in one culture or you are in another culture. There are some basic things. Irrespective of race, religion, culture, time. Like truth, value, compassion, moral integrity. These are universal. Not only that, these are expected to be followed by all in the normal circumstances. So these values are expected to be followed by every human being under normal circumstances, and these act as a adhesive force. They bring people together. What is that which is bringing Americans and Indians together? There are some values which are universal. There are some values which are universal because for the entire humanity, for all cultures, irrespective of race, religion, caste, culture, religion, time, anything. These are the things which are binding us. And these are regarded as eternal values or universal values. They are also known as core values. Right? Number one, if the question will be like this. Some say that Vema is culture specific. And some say that Vema is universal. What do you understand by this? Critically analyze or explain. In your opinion, are they culture specific or universal? When you take up the thing universal, you have to say, there are some Vema which are common to our culture because they are basic to humanity. They have to be followed and they will be present irrespective of race, religion, culture, time. And all are expected to follow this under normal circumstances. These are the values, these are the Vema which act as a adhesive thing, which bring people together. These are known as eternal, universal, or core values. On the other hand, we also have some values which are specific to culture. Say, for example, in India, familyism means family is important, more importance to the family, subsuming the individual interest, individual identity in the family. So yeah, you might have often heard often people saying, you know, the family, my family background, or even if you are trying to find a match to a girl, first we'll see what is the family background. Because we are giving more importance to families. Dependency. Here, we think that parents have to look after their children. Say, for example, they already have given 6 attempts for them, for some 10 attempts in civil service. You go on writing, your parents will go on giving money. This is not the case in Western countries. This is not the case. After like almost a person becomes like graduates, like when it becomes like above 18, almost hands off, parents will take their hands off. This person acts like an individual entity. For reading, you might go for loans or anything like that. At the same time, parents also won't expect these children will look after me. In India, it's not the case. There is dependency. Parents look after children and children look after parents. There is dependency. Not only here, in many Asian countries like Japan, China, this is there. And there is collectivism. Collectivism is we are giving priority or importance to the group. These are the things which are present in India, or you can say in Asian countries. Familiism means subsuming your identity, giving more importance to family. Dependency, one depending on the another. Collectivism, giving the group main priority. emphasis on cohesiveness among the individuals and prioritization of the group over the self, collectivism we can see. This is specific to the Indian culture. This may not be true in case of Western culture, where you have got individualism. Means you are giving importance to individual first, not the family or the collectivism. Liberalism, individual freedom is a central thing. Liberty, openness to new ideas, they give more importance to these things. So these are specific to this culture. Yes, students, this is a very, very important concept. Just go back to the definition which is given by second ARC. How has second ARC defined ethics? Ethics means set of standards or principles which are placed on the society by the society. By the society. Means it is a thing which is having a cultural connotation. Right? This cultural thing, society. So society, from society to society, it will differ. So what should be your answer? Your answer should be both. Some Vema are unique to culture, one culture, and common to all cultures. So your answer should be both. You give the examples which I have given. Truth, honesty. Is there any society which reverse like stealing the things? Love, compassion, they're universal. On the other hand, familiism, dependency, collectivism, these are culture specific. So for example, India, individualism, liberalism, these are specific to Western countries. So your Vema are both culture specific and also universal. Right? Any doubt till these concepts? Is all these things clear to you? Okay. Next, very important thing. See here, as of now, so please keep your understanding. We have discussed 3 important criteria with respect to values, ethics, morals, and attitude. Number 1, are they static or dynamic? Our answer is they are relatively permanent. Are they absolute or relative? Our answer is both. Are they culture specific or universal? Our answer is they are both. We have to substantiate with the examples also. Next, one more important thing. Are your values, ethics, morals, and attitude objective or subjective? So, with respect to civil service, objective means where you find objective things, objective questions, prelims, subjective things in mains. So, our values, your Vema, prelims or mains? This is the question. What do you understand by objective and subjective? Say, for example, mains. What is this? Subjective type, essay type. What do you understand by this? Here, you have got the liberty to write what you feel. According to you, it is dependent on the subject. On the other hand, objective means it is not dependent on you. They have given 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to just tick. One student even asked, sir, in objective type of questions, we'll be having 4. 1, 2, 3. The answer is in front of us. Don't you, sir? Does this mean that it is very, very easy? Prelims is very, very easy? I was like, it made me, in fact, to think. This thing was, sir, answer is there in front of you. That too only 4. Can't we make out from these things? Dear students, in fact, your prelims is the one which is very, very difficult. Which is very, very difficult. Main reason is, hypothetically, they say that 10 lakh people take up prelims. In that, 10,000 will be selected for mains. Means, if you go for like proportion 1:2, all these things, it may not be that impressing for you. Here, if 10 lakh people are appearing, you have to be better than 9,90,000 people, my dear students. If 10 lakh people are applying, you should be better than this 9,90,000 hypothetical thing. No, don't go for like, so in that only 5 lakh are appearing, in that only 2 lakh are serious. Okay, you take only 2 lakh are serious. See the sheer number. Even if you take 2 lakh, means you should outperform more than 1,90,000 people. Not only that, here in many times, the options are very, very close. Very close. So you'll be left like thinking as to what to do. On the other hand, when you go for mains, from 10,000, like because 1:10, 1:12, you take like that. From 10,000, they'll take, say, for example, 2,000. So here, the chances of you clearing is high. It is easy or not in a competitive examination depends on how others perform. Here you are competing with 10 lakh. Here you are competing with only 10,000. Here you have to push. You have to outperform only 8,000. Once again, when it comes to here, 1,000. If you suppose think that 1,000 seats are there, then you have to outperform 1,000. So dear students, prelims is the most crucial thing. That is the reason, except few people who have prepared a lot for over a period of time, some exceptions, only 2 to 3% are clearing the prelims in first attempt. 97% more, even 98, 99% of the people are failing the prelims in the first attempt. For many reasons. One reason I have already told you, if you prepare GS 1, 2, 3 perfectly, nobody can stop you from clearing prelims. That is one of the secret. Right? Moving forward, objective or subjective? Is VEMA prelims or mains? Is the thing. What do you mean by that? What exactly? Means that no, objective means not influenced. Objective means not influenced by personal feelings, opinions in considering and representing the facts. Objectivity. On the other hand, subjective. When you are writing mains answer, based on or influenced by the personal feeling, taste, and opinions. See, don't get confused. There are little bit. There are some overlappings. Doesn't matter. Concentrate here. Objective, subjective. When you say the things are subjective, it is based on or it is influenced by the personal feeling, taste, and opinions. On the other hand, when we say that they're objective, they're not dependent on personal feelings, opinions, considering with respect to, it is more like facts. Okay. Then the question arises, are your VEMA objective or subjective? Those who argue that it is objective. What do you mean by objective? Objective means based on, not influenced by your personal feelings or opinion. It is based on facts. Objectivism, just think that based on facts. Subjectivism, based on subjects, influence, personal feelings. So they argue that for objectivists, values are inherent in the object itself. So why they are saying they are objective? They are saying that values are inherent in the object itself. So values are present in the object. The satisfaction or pleasure is only an index. Say for example, biryani, or for those vegetarians, palau. So palau or some rice item. The object for objective is there is something in the biryani itself. If you say this is good, it is just an index of the thing. Value is present in the object itself. The satisfaction you deserve, the pleasure you get is only the index of this value. Gold glitters. Gold glitters. The shining property is there in the gold. Diamond glitters. The shining property is present in the diamond itself. You're wearing that just because they are glittering. Rainbow. Rainbow is beautiful in itself. So values are inherent in the object itself. There is something intrinsic to the nature of the object that forces us to say that this is beautiful or good. There is something in rainbow. There is something in gold. There is something in diamond. There is something in that individual that forces us to say that this is beautiful, this is good. Take the example of rainbow. Is there anyone who said that rainbow is ugly? Is there anyone who ever said rainbow is one of the ugliest thing I have ever seen? No, I think no. Because rainbow itself, there is inherent value. There's something in a rainbow. When you say rainbow is beautiful, it's just an index. Why you are saying that is beautiful? Because there is something inside that forces you to say that. Right? According to objectivists who say that VEMA, values, ethics, morals, and attitudes are objective. They say that these are inherent in the object itself. The satisfaction, the pleasure which you get from this is because there is already something in that. There is something intrinsic, it is present within. There is something intrinsic to the nature of the object that forces us to say that it is beautiful or good. So they say that it is not dependent on individual. It is not dependent on individual. It is not dependent on you and me. It is not dependent on the subject because it is present in the object itself. It is not dependent on you or me. It is present in the object itself according to objectivists. Moving further, the object has a value, so it gives us satisfaction. The object has a value. That is the reason it is giving satisfaction. The gold glitters. There is a glittering thing. That is the reason it is giving satisfaction. There is something in this biryani. There is something here which is giving satisfaction. There is something in the rainbow that compels you to judge that that is beautiful. Beauty, truth, goodness are objective standards, are norms of comparison, not wholly constituted by our appreciation for them. So when you say something is beautiful, truth, goodness, they're objective standards. It's not just because you are appreciating the thing. There is something within the rainbow which compels you to say that it's beautiful. There is something in the object. What you see, what you derive is just an index, the satisfaction you get. There are objective standards, truth, beauty, goodness. This is the argument of the objectivist. On the other hand, the subjectivist says that they say that objects have no inherent value at all. Objects have no inherent value at all. There is nothing, no value is present within an object. Satisfaction or pleasure being a state of feeling within the mind is entirely subjective. For objectivists, they argue that there is nothing inherent in anything. There is nothing inside that object. The satisfaction or pleasure being state of mind, it depends on you, it depends on the individual. They're entirely subjective. A thing, say for example, gold. Gold may not please me at all. I may not like it at all. Are you getting the difference? So for objectives, value is present in the object itself. For subjective, values are not present in the objects. Satisfaction and pleasure is only an index for these people. Here, satisfaction and pleasure is a state of feeling which is there in your mind. It is not the index. It is something which is there in your mind. If these qualities were really existent, if these qualities are really existent in the facts, they would be observable like objects, beauty and good. Please understand this. If these qualities, like say for example, beauty or good, are really existent in the facts, they would be observable like objects. Can you observe good? Can you observe beauty? That beauty means there should be something appearing. So what they are saying is the beauty, the good, what you say are present in an object according to objectivists. No, they are not present there. They are present in your mind. They are present in your head. They are not present there. It is dependent on the subject. It is present with respect to subject. This is what they say. For subjectivists, a thing which satisfies me may not satisfy you. A thing which satisfies me may not satisfy you. True. They are neither good nor bad, neither beautiful nor ugly. Everything is subjective. Everything is present within the mind. If something has to be, if you think that something is present in them, then if you say something is good, then good also should appear as an objective thing. It is not visible. Beauty is something which you are giving. It is present in your mind. Values cannot be wholly objective. Values without valuation or appreciation by some mind or other are not values at all. So they say that values cannot be fully objective. Values cannot be present only in the object. You are valuing, you are giving importance. If you are not giving importance, if you are not valuing or appreciating the thing, then they are not values at all. Like going back to our definitions, values are those things which are important. If it is important for society, it becomes societal value. If it is important for organization, it becomes organization value. If it becomes important for community, it becomes communal value. If the community is not giving, the individual not recognizing that, then it is not value for it itself. These are the two arguments. So in a beautiful way, I have presented the things. This is one of the good thing I have gathered from many sources and very crisp. Think it over. There is no need for you to behead the things. Just take the gist of the things, and you should be able to reproduce in your own word. I once again reiterate, my dear students, don't try to behead the definitions. If you try to define, if you want to behead the definition, you may have to behead more than 10,000, sometimes more than 1 lakh definitions. You understand the thing. How to understand the things? You remove the key points from the definitions. Your answer should have these key points. That's enough. Moving forward, so some argue that values are both objective and also subjective. First one, they said that values are present in the object itself. Here we have got values. That is the reason why we say that this is beautiful, why we say that this is good. On the other hand, say that no, values are not present here. Values are present in our mind. We are the persons who are evaluating, who are the persons who are giving importance to these things. If we are not evaluating this, then it is not a value at all. This was an argument from both the sides. There is another argument which says that values are both subjective and objective. Here, it's a little bit more philosophical and in-depth content. Please do give attention here. So, according to S. Alexander, values are a tertiary quality. No need for you to remember this individual's name. Just the concept is important, but he's a person who has told. That is the reason I have to. According to him, Srija, please mute your phone. Values are subjectively conditioned objective qualities. See, these are very, very like subjective things. Again, see here. According to Alexander, values are subjectively conditioned objective qualities. According to Alexander, values are subjectively conditioned, means those are the things which have been evaluated, which are there in your mind, which are there in the individual. Conditioned objective qualities. So he's saying values are both subjective and objective because they are subjectively conditioned. They're present in your mind also. At the same time, they are objective. The ideals or values, truth, beauty, goodness exist in objects as well as human mind. Is this clear? So according to him, the ideals, the values like truth, beauty, goodness, there is something within that also. At the same time, you also appreciating that. So according to him, both are, it's present in both. Moving forward, he also says that values of things are the functions of two variables. Values of things are the functions of two variables according to him. What are these? One is environment and another is organic. Organic, when we say organic, it is like organism, subjective. So here we are into the concept that VEMA are both subjective and objective. In this regard, values are the functions of two variables. One is environmental thing, that is like the thing objectively present in rainbow, gold, all these things. On the other hand, something which is present in the subject individual's mind. Value of an object is determined by the man's desire, but whether the man finds an object desirable or undesirable obviously depending on some properties of the object. Very beautiful example. Please internalize. This is very, very important. This is the crux of the things which say that values are both subjective and objective. Values are the function, or it depends on two things. They depend on two things, two variables. It consists of two variables. One is environment and another is the organic, the individual subjective things. Value of an object is determined by man's desire. Means value of an object is determined by man's desire. Means it is subjective, organic. But whether man finds the object desirable or undesirable obviously depend on some properties present. Is this clear? So when you say that gold would have no value unless man desired for it. But perhaps men desire it because it glitters and it is durable metal. So there is present both in the individual and also in the object. God would have not have a value unless the man desires. Say, for example, a very, very primitive person where they are not aware of gold or diamond, they may not value that. But perhaps man desires that because it glitters, it is durable. That is the reason. Like one of the most important thing, especially in Asian countries, women are very, very fond of gold for many reasons. See, the value which is given, value given to the gold by women and men are different. Men may not consider that as that value. On the other hand, women may consider that as the most important thing. So always men may say, okay, if you need money, keep all the gold in bank. Women resist. So value is present both in your mind and in the object. If it is not in the object, you would have not appreciated, you would have not valued at all. Similarly, value judgments are in a sense factual judgments describing qualities that are valued. See, once again, a very, very difficult thing. Value judgments means values, yes, value judgments are value judgments are in a sense factual judgments describing qualities that are valued. You valued gold, but you are making factual judgments. You are describing those things. Not only that, man's life is a progressive realization of the values of truth, beauty, and goodness. They are not created by him, but they manifest themselves to him when he is drawn near to them. In fact, reality itself is a value. In fact, reality itself is a value. Here, they say that man in the process of realization of what is truth, what is beautiful, what is goodness, is in the process, is progressive realization. They are not created by him, but they are manifested themselves to him when he is drawn nearer and near to them. The truth, this beauty, this goodness, they are not created by man, but they manifest themselves when the man is in search of truth, beauty, and goodness. In fact, reality itself is a value. So, dear students, here the main argument, this will be a bit difficult for you to analyze the thing. You may go for this slide. It will be very easy for you to understand. So, to conclude, you can say that your VEMA are both subjective and objective because all the values are the function of two variables. One is with respect to the environment. Another is with respect to the subject. Value of an object is determined by the man, but man determines, man desires. His desires, his opinion is dependent on some property which is there in the object. Take the example of gold, or gold is the good example, or you can take other things also. Gold would have no value unless men desired it, but perhaps men desire it because it glitters and it's a durable. So what is the answer for this? Values, ethics, morals, and attitudes are both subjective and objective. But you have to give both the sides of the thing. I have beautifully presented them in the form of facts. Please go through them. So here we have, as of now, we have discussed with respect to all the four VEMA: values, ethics, morals, and attitude. For this, we have discussed one, are they static or dynamic? Our answer is they are relatively permanent. Are they absolute or relative? They are both. Are they culture specific or universal? They are both. Are they subjective or objective? Our thing is to conclude both. In all the things, I have given plenty of examples with respect to objective, relative, culture specific, universal, all these things. The examples I have taken, like say for example, truth with respect to Indian values, with respect to subjective or objective, gold, diamond, rainbow. These are the things which you have to write. So dear students, this is the crux of the things. These are the four important dimensions which you have to internalize. Okay, moving forward. Okay, next coming to the main thing, ethics. Here often, this is very important question. In fact, here, ethics, here a lot of confusion. In fact, UPSC asked like more than 3 to 4 times with respect to ethics and law. Ethics and law. It's a deep question, in fact. In parlance, many of you confuse ethics with religion. We just still now, we have studied one definition. We are not concretely, we have not discussed anything about ethics in particular. Now, we shall discuss, we will go in depth with respect to ethics. What is ethics? What can be said as ethics? For some, ethics has different meanings. So this was a very important thing, research in fact done long back by sociologist Raymond Boomhard, when he asked people, what do ethics mean to you? He asked people, what do ethics mean to you? One said, ethics is my religious beliefs. Ethics is religious beliefs. Can we equate ethics for religion? Can we equate? The question is not that, won't we have some ethical things in religion? That is not the question. Definitely there will be many things which are ethical in religion. But the thing is, can we equate ethics and religion? The answer is no. Answer is no. Because there are many things in religion which are unethical. Say, for example, untouchability. Do you think this is ethical? It is one of the thing which has got religious sanctions? Sati Paddhati, which was granted religious sanctions. Do you think that this is the thing? Even some of the texts, some of the religious texts, they gave sanctions for slavery. Some of the holy things, texts, they said that one man, certain kind of people are superior and other are inferior. And in religion, not only that, there are many things based on superstition. Religion is not based on logic. Belief is not based on something, reasoning. Something, we say that God has said, we have to believe. No questioning. And added to this, there are many people who doesn't believe in religion at all. Is it clear? So there are many people who doesn't believe in religion, and you take any religion, there are many unethical things in that. Then can we equate ethics to religion? The answer is no. We can't equate. I'm very carefully using the term. We can't equate ethics with religion. Religion may have many ethical things. Some religion may have more ethical things. Some religion may have less ethical things. But we cannot equate ethics with religion. Then what is ethics? Some people said, ethics is what my feelings tell me is right and wrong. Your feelings tell that something, go and beat him. Is this right and wrong? Your feelings are not stable. As you are saying, they are your feelings. They always change. Can we equate something which is very, very malleable, which is not permanent, which is fluctuating, which is changing? Your feelings changes with circumstances, time, situation. Can we equate this to something as ethics? No, we cannot equate at any cost our feelings to ethics. But I am not saying that your feelings are not always unethical. I never said that your feelings are always unethical. Or I never said that your feelings doesn't have anything which is concerned with the ethics. They may have ethical things. They may have some ethical standards. But we cannot equate ethics to our feelings. Then what is ethics? For that, some said, being ethical is doing what law requires. Being ethical is doing what law requires. What is the supreme law? What is the mother law? What is the basic law? Constitution. Yes, Constitution is a law. But it is a basic law, fundamental law, from which all other laws come out. This is the law of the land. This is the one through which we are ruled. Can we say this is ethical? There were many laws. Say, for example, before the Civil War, the American laws, they legally gave sanction for slavery. Many pre-independent colonial laws were unethical. They did not care for freedom. They were always suppressing oppression of the people. There are many laws which are not ethical. But my dear students, laws are dependent, have the basis in ethics. Please understand the things. Laws have basis in ethics. But we cannot say laws is equal to ethics. We cannot equate ethics and law. There can be many laws which are unethical. I have given, say for example, next, apartheid In South Africa, till recently, apartheid was a law. Through law, they segregated the people based on the place of origin, based on race. They had separate buses. They had separate restaurants. Apartheid in South Africa, slavery in America before Civil War, and before independence, the colonial laws. There are many things which are unethical. But laws have basis in ethics. But all laws are not ethical. So we cannot equate ethics and law. Then what is ethics? You said that it is not, we can't equate ethics to religion. We can't equate ethics to feelings. We can't equate ethics to laws. Then what is ethics? Some said that ethics consists of the standards of behavior our society accepts. What if the whole society is unethical? Whole society is unethical. Say, for example, Nazi society. The entire Nazi society was unethical. Say, for example, there is one society, the whole society gives sanction for something which is unethical. Genocide. So in this regard, we cannot consider everything with respect to society as also ethical. The whole society may be morally corrupt. Then some people at last, they said, I don't know. Can this happen? I don't know what ethics means. In fact, this is one of the best answers, in fact. So I remember a small, like a humorous thing with respect to, I don't know. There was a farmer. There was a farmer who was raising like chicks, hens, polling. So he was raising them. And somehow he took care of these things, and all the hens were very, very fat, big, healthy. Number one came and he asked, dear farmer, what you are giving to your hens, your chicks? They are so healthy. He said, I am feeding them that, this, all these things. So that is the reason why they are healthy. Then he said, I am from income tax department. You are spending a lot of money. You have not paid income tax. So you will be prosecuted. So this fellow was confused. The second person came and he asked. So already he has burnt the things by saying, he said that, no, I don't give anything to my chicks. There's just simply like they are swallowing air and they are somehow becoming robots. Then I said, I'm from like animal protection of animals. This is violence against animals. Once again, the farmers were like, once again, was confused. Then third person also came, farmer, what you are giving to these things? He said, no, I'm not giving anything. I'm giving all this 1 rupee. I don't know what they are doing. That is left to them. This was just one thing. This cannot happen because all societies have ethics. You are part of society. So how can you say that I don't know? Each society has ethics. Each society has ethics of its own. Each individual is a part of society. That is the reason why people say, especially social scientists like anthropologists and sociologists, in humanity, there is no one, you can't call anyone uncultured. You can't call anyone uncultured. Why? Because all societies have culture and each individual is a part of culture. So how can you call this person as uncultured? Are you getting me? Very important, powerful line. You can't call anyone uncultured because all societies have culture. All individuals are part of society. So Each individual has culture. You can't call him uncultured. Similarly, all societies have ethics. You are part of society. Then how can you say that you don't know ethics? The reason is you may not be able to put these things in a perfect way. You may not be able to put these things in a perfect way. But in reality, you know what is ethics. You may not be able to express them properly. You know what is ethics. You're part of society. Society has ethics. Then what is ethics? So, students, you have to differentiate ethics from all these things. Most importantly, law, which has been most often asked. We'll elaborate on this one in depth. But you cannot equate ethics to religion, ethics to feelings, ethics to any of the things. And also, you cannot say that I don't know ethics. Right? Any doubt with respect to the things, these things? If you have any doubt, please let me know. And you have got an assignment also, please don't go away. So, okay.